Hello and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to show you how to install this intake spacer by Z1 Off-Road. We're going to be installing this on this Nissan Frontier, which has the 4.0 engine in it. Their kit comes with pretty much everything that you need, from the extended bolts and then the gaskets that go along with it. In their newer kits, and my kit did not have this, is that it comes with the supporting bracket for the intake itself. Since you're raising it up, you need to really support the left side of that intake, and so I'm gonna have to figure out some support for that intake when I finish that up. They also include the instructions, of course, and also if you want to take a look at what type of horsepower and torque gains that you'll get through the RPM range, that's out on their website as well. So why don't we go ahead and get started, and I'll show you how to do the install. There's also a couple extra steps that I want to talk about during the install that is not in their instruction booklet, and it may help you make the install a little bit easier. All right, let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is remove the top of this air filter box, the intake tube, and also the engine cover. And you also want to move that clip there as well. Set that aside, and carefully. There's also another tube over here that needs to be disconnected as well. Set that aside. This is going to be for the front differential breather. All right, you want to next take off this clamp. There are some bolts down here clamping this on. And you'll need to just give this a yank. And then there's those two bolts right there that need to come out. My truck has an oil catch can. I'm going to go ahead and remove that now. The next thing that we'll want to do is there is a bracket here and a bolt. Next step is we're going to remove the bolt off of this control, and then also the vacuum. We'll go ahead and remove these two vacuum lines. To give you a better shot of how I got this off, there is, hopefully you can see it, maybe not. I did remove this clip off this harness, and you can't see it, but there is a plastic snap right there. You push that down and you pull it to the right here, and that will come off that bracket. And so instead of separating these, what I'm going to do is just pull this off this metal connection bracket. Before we continue, there is this bracket here. It does have a bolt on it. It looks like I need to remove that bracket to get that off of the intake. In the next step, we want to make sure that we follow the diagram, removing the upper intake. And the way that you do that, this is depicting if we're going to go ahead and install the intake and install the bolts. So what we want to do is the opposite. We want to start with the outside and go in, so just follow the number sequence backwards. I went ahead and put lubrication on all the nuts and bolts here. Next step, and I didn't read all the tools required, you need to have an E6 Torx bit. Luckily, I found one. I ended up about 2 years ago Father passed away, got a bunch of tools. They're all sitting pretty much in my toolbox now. Thankfully, I got one of these e-Torx e-Torx socket from my father. So thanks, Dad, for supplying me with another useful tool. Again, you want to be careful with removing these studs. Again, I put some lubricant on them. If they do start to bind up, what you want to start to do is go ahead and tighten them back down a little bit, and then I'll loosen them up again. There was just a little bit of rust on that bolt right there in that thread, so just take your time. All right, now it's time to lift this off, but before I go and do that, what I want to do is I want to start to clean up around here. The very last thing that I did, you have this brake booster line that runs to the back of the intake. I ended up just removing that, was able to fully tilt the thing up, and as you can see, there is enough room now in there. And I also wanted to show you guys, you know, what it looks like in there. And also, I have gaskets that I want to replace on here as well. And also, I want to get this cleaned up. All right, the gaskets are going in. Now that this is all completed, now we're going to get ready to install it. Now what we wanted to make sure is that Z1 Off-Road emblem is upright and it's not on the back side. It needs to be on the front of the engine. Right, it's now time to take the 7 bolts that came in the kit and go ahead and reinstall this. So something to point out is to start maybe with that back bolt. That was the hardest one, and as you saw, I was installing the bolts from front to back. Probably a better approach would have been from back to front. Back to the directions, take a look at how we're going to tighten these in sequence. We're going to start from the inside and work our way out according to the diagram. It recommends that we put 8 pounds of torque on these bolts. So right now I've snugged them all up, and we're going to start with that sequence. Now that we have all of the bolts torqued, now we can go to reassemble what we've taken apart. Probably the easiest and best place to start is in the back of the engine, where the brackets are and the wiring harnesses. I'm going to go ahead and show you the solutions of when you're putting on this intake spacer. Things don't line up perfectly. You know, the engine cover doesn't go back on quite right. You may have some issues like I had with the wires being very taut there. But the first one over here is the bracket. The original bracket is off by the height of the spacer. So I built some of these out of nylon so that I can bolt that down. They're a high temp nylon, so I should be good. Also for the wiring, of course, I opened up this loom. I'm going to wrap it back up. with some electrical tape, high temp electrical tape. And of course, if you want to put back on the engine cover, you need 2 of those mounting points. One is here, one is over here, but of course it's too short. I went out and solved that. I got this riser here. There's nothing that I need to do to go ahead and modify this. I'm just going to put that riser in here like that, and then take the original bolt and just screw that on. That will make up the difference, and my engine cover will go back on. There is also, of course, another mounting point bracket right here that goes and attaches. This will have to have, risers as well. They're called a standoff, but then the original bolts can go right back into them. So they're an M6, and so that will fix that as well. There is one small adjustment that I had to make on this. Unfortunately, this bracket as it is going to end up hitting a part on this front cover, timing chain cover. All you have to do is to bend out the pipe on the bracket, and you won't be able to see it because I already bent it, and it's not, it's not a lot. You'll have to bend that out so that it misses this point down here. So anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and install those right now. All right, now that all of the pieces are back together for the ones that I had to make adjustments to, it's now time to get on that intake pipe. About 40 miles per hour here, getting back onto the highway. Alright, we're about 3,500 RPM, going about 60. Drop back to 3,000 RPM, doing just a little over 70 miles an hour. Before closing out on this installation video of the Z1 off-road intake spacer, I want to point out Thanksgiving Day, go Lions, upcoming Michigan versus Ohio State, go Wolverines. Now, as I mentioned, this is a 2012 Nissan Frontier. As I understand it, 05 to 12 on their lower intake did not have any controls, any electronic controls to adjust the air intake based on RPM range. Now in 2013, they made a modification on the VQ40DE engine in which they added those variable controls. Now, this is all part of the VIAS system. This one does have an upper butterfly control in the upper intake. You saw that maybe when I was taking it apart, vacuum tubes, and there was a vacuum chamber up there to control that. I don't know when Z1 Off-Road did their testing and their dyno testing for this intake I'm not sure if it would make any difference on a 12 versus a 13. If you have some information on that, that would be great to share. Go ahead, give me a thumbs up if you like this video. In the comment section below, you can share any information that you would like, questions and comments. And thanks for watching. I appreciate your support, and we'll see you in the next video.